1. Perfect. So we expect a lag. That's okay. So, hello everyone. Welcome back to another one of Protect Academy's webinars. You know the drill, so we're going to be waiting for another 30 seconds for more participants to join, and then we'll commence. Till then, get yourself something to drink, put in your earphones if you're driving, and we'll just get started in another 30 seconds. Thank you. So, great. I can see that the participants have started joining in. So, welcome once again. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much to everyone who's going to be watching the recorded format. We never forget about you, and we're always very grateful. And today's session is going to be with the legendary Mr. Saz Rai. He's back with us with another one of his excellent webinars. And also, he's coming out with his CISM certification training, which is starting from the 16th of this month. So, in case you missed out the last time, I would highly recommend get in this time because at Protect, we are celebrating the Independence Month. And there are great offers and discounts going on all the trainings. We're bringing down the barrier to entry when it comes to learning and upskilling yourself in information security. Okay, so today's webinar is going to be about discussing what corporations and boards expect from information security leaders and how do you become an information security leader? How do you slip into that position? And that's where the CISM certification comes in. So, without further ado, Mr. Sazrai, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you, Ghazal, for having me again. And so, hi, everyone. Welcome to the session. Before, I hope you're able to see my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, let me very quickly introduce myself. My name is Saj Rai. I have over 2.5 decades of experience in various industries. Been fortunate to lead IT teams in various positions. And I've also been teaching and training for over a decade now. And I'm an authorized instructor for various courses, including the season from ISACA and many others. So, having said that, let's get into some interesting discussions here today. This is going to be a portion, small portion, but an important portion from the season course, and we're gonna just going to talk about some of these things. And you are most welcome to post in your questions and queries. Okay. To begin with, CISM is about information security governance. All right. So, what is this governance all about? So, here I'm going to kind of bridge the gap between that technical security leadership and what the board level expectations are. Okay. So, the focus is going to be on what the board actually wants from an InfoSec leader and how the CISM course will prepare you to deliver exactly that. So information security governance. Well, there's a lot to talk about it. Um, so we're not just talking about policies and checklists. Well, that's only one aspect of governance. Governance is about the decision making. Okay? So who decides? What gets protected? How is it funded? How do we measure the success? And so on. There are many other things that goes into it, but these are the important aspects. And the true governance is it's not an IT function, but it's a business function aligned with the strategy, the accountable to risk appetite, and measured by performance and not really activity, right? So it touches every layer from the board, the oversight to how your security team gets the budget and so on. So CSM makes this a central theme because both expects governance maturity, not just compliance checkboxes, right? And so the core domains of information security governance, these are the ones: strategic alignment, performance measurement, risk management integration, resource management, and value delivery, right? So strategic alignment, there's a lot to talk about it, but just to give you an overview at the moment, it is ensuring that your information security is supporting the business goals, where you're aligning the security initiative with the enterprise. Okay, and this is a very important aspect of CISM. Or as an information security leader, you need to understand the strategic alignment, which means that any investment into IT or security has to support the business. Okay, and we prepare those business cases. We'll need to learn how to do that, and make sure that any initiative, any investment has to align with the enterprise goals and objectives. Okay. And the next aspect is the performance measurement, where we define, we track your KPIs, something such as your uh, MTTR, MTTD, and so on. Okay. Uh, then we have the risk management integration, very important. One of your key responsibility as an information leader is to manage the risk. Okay, manage the risk to the business. Why? Well, because if your risks are not managed, then the business obviously is not able to perform its goals and objectives. Okay, for example, data loss, data breach, okay, DDoS attacks, ransomware attacks, and so on. So these events, disasters, and incidents could impact your business ability to perform, to achieve these goals, and so you need to manage the risk for the business. So that risk management becomes an integral part of your core responsibility. And resource management, again, important. You need to optimize use of your resources, such as people, tools, budgets. Okay, ensure we have skilled staff and sustainable capabilities. And ultimately, it's about delivering value to your stakeholders. Okay, so making sure there's maximum return on your security investments, right? So every stakeholder has their own needs, and we need to be able to manage that, right? So delivering value for your stakeholders. Stakeholders could be your investors, your customers, regulators, and so on, your business partners. So we need to deliver value to them. Okay, so these are some of the important aspects you need to manage as part of information security governance. So one of the key questions you need to be able to answer is, who is ultimately responsible for information security governance, right? Who's ultimately responsible? If something goes wrong, for example, there is a you're not as an organization, you're not compliant with the regulations. As an organization, there's a major data breach, policies are not in order, and so on. So who's going to be answerable for this? Okay, who will be answerable? And so many people say the CISO. Well, the answer is not the most correct answer, because the ultimate responsibility lies with the board of directors, the senior management, who are considered to be ultimately responsible for information security governance. So, as I mentioned, information security governance starts at the top. Okay, so the board, they are ultimately accountable or ultimately responsible. Okay, so they are stewards for business risk, which includes obviously the cybersecurity risk as well. So CISO is not really the owner of the risk, but your role as a CISO or a CISM is going to be more of an advisor and an implementer. And the board will delegate the operational responsibilities to the executive management, but the accountability never leaves that boardroom. Okay, so this is the top-down approach to that, and you can look at this diagram at the very top, the pyramid. We have very top. We have board of directors, who and they will delegate the responsibility to the CEO, the executive management, right? The CISO, who is going to be accountable for the overall security strategy. CISO will set the directions, manages risks reporting, and ensures alignment with the executive priorities, right? And at the very bottom, we have saw with the security team. Some of you may be part of this team already. So you're going to be responsible for implementing controls, monitoring systems, responding to incidents, and so on. Okay, so you are part of that day-to-day operations of the security program, and that's how the hierarchy, and so on. So you probably would have something like a RACI matrix. It talks about who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed, okay, and so on. And as I mentioned at the very top, we have the board of directors, and they have the highest level of accountability under the governance model. So anything that goes wrong within the organization, the board has to be answerable. Okay. So why is this important? So what you need to understand is that this pyramid that you see here, this reminds us that cybersecurity is not just an IT issue. It's a business issue. Okay. So, and it takes all the levels of the organization to manage it effectively and sustainably. Okay. So very important. So that ways, there is a lot that the board will expect from you, whether in whichever role that you play. And as a season, you will be typically the role of a season, right? Or IT director, or whatever role that is. It really doesn't matter, but that's the managerial role or the leadership role that you'll be playing within the organization, right? So that's what this is about. So what does the board expect from an infosec leader like you? Okay. So I suppose you've understood at the very top lies the board. And so they do have a lot of expectations. Okay. So first of all, the board care about the business risk and not just the technical details. And they will not going to be they will not understand what are ports, or firewalls, or CVEs. They don't really want to hear about it, or rather, they will not even understand if you talk about a firewall or a port number or a CVSS score. What they want to know is what's the potential financial impact or what's the business impact. Okay, so questions like, are we exposed to regulatory penalties? Could this harm our reputation? Right? So that's what they want to know. That brings us to the second point, which is that the regulatory compliance and brand trust, whether depending on your organization, you may have to comply with various regulations, laws. So, like GDPR, SOX, HIPAA, and so on, RBI, or wherever you are. And so the boards are deeply concerned about compliance, not because they love regulations, but because non-compliance could bring lawsuits, fines, and obviously media headlines, right, which could harm their reputation. The third point here is the boards are focused on incident preparedness and resilience. They want to know if we are attacked, how fast can we recover? Okay, do we have an incident playbook? Is the executive team ready to respond? Yeah. So that's these are some of the areas that the boards would like to focus on. And remember, all of these would tie back to the business because at the end of the day, organizations exist to meet the business goals and objectives, right? So, so the finally, a major shift is where the security is no longer seen as a cost center. Okay, so if you do it right, security is going to be more of a enabler. It will enable new markets, support digital transformation, build trust with your customers and your business partners. So it's a strategic business enabler, and that's what the lens we should adopt as an InfoSec leader, right? So many of us coming from the technical background, this mindset is absolutely critical, right? To thinking like a manager, that leadership, managerial thought is what we need to focus on. Yeah, as I mentioned, the boards they don't really speak in terms of CVS scores or 0 days or these technical terms, but like it's more going to be about the business, about the impact to the financial loss or operational disruption, legal exposures, reputational damage. So that is the kind of language that you need to understand and able to translate that. Okay. So that's why one of the most critical leadership skills is the ability to translate the technical risk into the business risk. And this is what CISM talks about from day one, that a technical risk is a business risk. And if it is not a business risk, then most likely that technical solution that you have is useless, right? You have a solution which is not supporting the business. So if there's a DDoS attack, well, the first question is, how does it impact the business? If there's a cross-site scripting attack, a vulnerability, so how does it impact the business? So that's what you need to think about. So you can use these financial terms and communicate, talk about the potential loss exposure, costs of downtime, revenue risk. Okay, so that's what the business will understand, the board will understand. If you talk about technical terms, it's not going to make any sense. Okay, so it's important to be able to do so. Map your technical issues to compliance and operational risk. Okay, so if there's a, like I said, if there's a SQL injection attack, a vulnerability, that so how do I present it to the board? So if I just mention SQL injection vulnerability, whatever, it doesn't make sense. So I need to be able to link it somehow to the business, maybe link it to the GDPR fines or the service level agreements or the penalties. So that is what's going to get the board's attention, right? The simple framework that we use is like we have, I mean, when you're measuring risk, we have a risk is measured as likelihood and impact. But what is likelihood? Likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability which could result in some business impact. And that is what the business risk is. Okay. For example, we can say a phishing threat exploits a lack of email filtering, leading to credential theft and potential financial fraud. Well, this will create a business risk of, let's say, $1 million in financial loss and reputational damage. So that's the kind of language we need to be able to speak. So when you're presenting risk in this way, you're not talking very technical. You are seen as a business risk advisor. Okay. What next? Okay. Again, the same concept here is about, so when you design an information security program, and that's going to be one of your key responsibility, and the CISM also talks about it, right? So again, as I said, it's not enough to build a list of technical initiatives. It must be aligned with the business. So that alignment starts by two things. I mean, you need to understand, like, what's the organization's strategic goals and what's its risk appetite. Okay. Those who do not know what a risk appetite is, so a risk appetite is how much risk that the organization is willing to take for a particular initiative. All right. So how much risk are you willing to take? So there can be various different types of risk. Let's say for a bank, that could be strategic risk, operational risks, IT risks, credit risk, market risk, and so on. Okay, financial risk. So the question is, how much risk are you willing to take? That's what the risk appetite is. Okay. And then the strategic alignment means things like, what is the business trying to achieve this year? Are we expanding into new markets? Are we launching any digital service? Are we improving the customer trust or the customer services? Okay, so your security program should be supporting these goals. Okay, it's not just about operations in isolation. So it has to be about these goals for the organization. Okay, so and the question then is, how do we go about doing this? So what does a mature security program look like? And so we can begin with a charter. A charter is like a document, and this has a clear statement of the purposes, the scope, the alignment with the enterprise priorities. So this will justify the fundings, the structure, the responsibilities, and the authority of your information security team or the function. Right? Charter is a very generic concept. Like if you're setting up a club, you'll probably have a club charter, or a project, you have a project charter. So one of the first thing that you will develop, which will determine the purpose, the scope, the alignment, the responsibility, the structure, the authority, and so on of that particular program. Next, as I mentioned, we need to have KPIs. So whatever investment going in, we need to be able to kind of be able to justify that and link it to the business outcomes. Okay, these are not just technical activity. So, for example, what kind of KPIs can we have? Well, so just instead of counting how many attacks were blocked, or how many viruses were viruses were uh, blocked or whatever. So you should be reporting on things like what matters to the business, such as reduce downtime, okay, improve regulatory posture, lower residual risks. Okay, this is what matters to the business. Right? This is what matters to the business. So look at these metrics rather than being very technical. Technical metrics are useful, but for the board, what they're looking at are these metrics which are aligned to the business. Okay. And so one of the things you need to understand is, as a CISM, as a information security leader, uh, it's a leadership role. Okay, so leadership where um, you need to communicate. We need to be able to create that um, cross-functional governance. Which means you need to work very closely with the legal, the HR, IT, physical security, business units, the senior leadership, and so on. So security is not a silo. You cannot be working in a silo, right? So it's a team sport, and ensuring it's a, like I said, it's a leadership role where you need to lead by example. You need to be able to communicate. You need to take everybody along, okay, and ensure that the governance ensure all the voices are at the table. Okay? It's not going to be easy, but this is one of the key skills that you need to learn. Okay, and many of the leaders that I've seen at the top, like CIOs, CISOs, they're not necessarily technical people. They're more of business people. Okay, so many of them are actually handling business units as well, business. So, and many of them have transitioned from business roles to taking on the CIA or the CISO positions. Okay, can you just give me just a moment, please? Yeah, sorry about that. Governance is not equal to management. This is one of the first lesson we have in CSIM. Um, and so this is one of the common misconception in security leadership. It's confusing governance and management. Well, they're not the same. And governance is more about direction and oversight, while management is more about the execution and the operations, right? So governance tells us what must be done and why do we need to do it. Management defines how it gets done. Okay. So anyway, so this is an important aspect we need to learn, and this is the first domain in season. Well, for we need to have things like processes, policies in place. We need to make sure that these policies are translated into actionable processes, right? And those processes must be enforced consistently. Without enforcement, governments remain just theoretical. We have policies on paper. Nobody has read it. Nobody, even if they've read it, nobody's asking questions on these things. Nobody's auditing these things. So it's just something that you review once in a year as part of your process, but you're not really enforcing governance, right? Unfortunately. Another key aspect is to assigning clear roles and decision making authority. As I mentioned, a RACI matrix, right? So you must have those. So people must know, like, what is their role? What are the risks that they own? Who approves? What are the exceptions? Who makes the final decisions? These are very important, and even in the season, these are the questions that get asked in the exam. So there's a very clear gap between who's accountable, who's responsible, especially during those high stakes situations. We need to understand these important concepts. So we have different important governance bodies such as well, steering committees or enterprise risk boards and so on. They generally have a very structured oversight. They ensure alignment. They help escalate decisions that need broader business input. So these roles becomes very important. And again, we need to learn these things. Okay. Okay. Another aspect here, which is incident communication planning. So incidents, unfortunately, something that we want to avoid, but does happen, and and so we need to be ready for that. In fact, season domain 4 covers all about incident management. And so during a cybersecurity incident, the boards are looking for clarity. They're not looking for technical kind of that that's the which malware happened and what not. They want they want clarity. They want clear, timely status updates, summarizes what happened, what's happening, and obviously without overloading them with the technical details. So it's critical to translate the situation into those business language that highlights operational impact. So what they would like to know is uh, things like which services are being disrupted, okay, how the customers are affected, and whether revenue or compliance or reputation is at risk, right? So whenever possible, use these business language, financial language, such as estimated downtime cost, potential regulatory exposures, to make the impact real and relatable to them. That's what they want to hear. They don't want to get into those details of which CVE or which tools are we using. No, no. MTTR. They will not want to hear those details. Okay. Next, they want to understand is what are we doing about it. Okay. So what are the action plans? Okay. There should be things like what are we doing immediately? What are the containment steps? What are the escalation paths? What's the recovery timeline? Broadly, they don't want to get into specific details, but they want to know that we are ready with these things, right? So it's always better to have structured templates. One of the format that we can use, and it's a very popular one, is what we know, okay, what we don't know, and what we're doing next. Okay, so every organization is obviously free to use their own templates, but this is a very proven format. So, so this any format that you take, or if you're taking this format, then this creates clarity. It prevents speculations. It shows that the situation is being managed in a disciplined and a transparent way. Okay? So it's very important to be transparent about uncertainties. Okay, your tone really matters. The way you're gonna communicate these matters. Uh, if you don't know, you don't know, right? So be transparent about it. Be confident in your process. Okay? You may not have all the answers at the time. Like if you don't have all the answers, it's okay to communicate that and say, well, I do not know the answers, but tell the board that I'm working on it. Okay. So and the board needs to feel that you are in control and there is a systematic response on the way. Okay. All right. Another aspect is asset prioritization and the KPI definition. This comes in the domain 3 of the information security program. And so where you obviously need to protect, identify and protect your organization's crown jewels. Okay, so what does it mean? These are your critical business services and high value data assets. So if compromised, it would cause the greatest harm, whether it's financially, operationally, or to the reputation as well. So first of all, if you want to protect something, you need to know what to protect, and like I said, we need to protect our crown jewels. That's going to be a priority. So that's why we have processes such as asset management, asset classification. So that's an important aspect of your responsibility as an information security leader. So boards will be asking these questions. They will not ask you about all those 100 systems you have. They're going to focus on those crown jewels. So they want assurance that we're focusing our efforts on what matters most. And like I said, the crown jewels. Okay, which could mean protecting the systems that run revenue generating services. Okay, the whole customer data, which will help enable compliance or support executive decision making. Again, because not all assets are equal. and our strategy must reflect that. So you may have your core banking system or your patient information system, your e-commerce system, or email system, or whatever those systems are, payroll systems. We talk about a concept which is known as BIA, business impact analysis. Okay, and this ties to those these discussion ties to the BIA, where we determine our critical systems, the crown jewels that needs more priority. Okay. So once the priorities are clear, well, the next step is to selecting the outcomes like the MTTD, like mean time to detect, mean time to respond, and so on. Um, so they need to understand that how the board will want to understand how quickly we can detect and contain these threats, right? We can also report on the percentage of risk assessments completed across critical assets. Okay. Or we also probably need to report on alignment with our regulatory expectations. We can define things like your regulatory readiness score. So, depending on your compliance requirements, such as GDPR or PCI DSS or SOX or PIPEDA or whatever, whatnot, so you need to be having these kind of metrics readiness. So, this is a regulatory readiness score. Okay, without getting to specific details, a score like you're 90% ready or 80% ready, whatever, that probably give them an understanding of where we are. Okay. So as I mentioned, by prioritizing your crown jewels and using these meaningful KPIs, we ensure our board sees the cybersecurity not as more as a focused, measurable business function. So, season, well, it's an important certificate, but it's more than just a certificate, right? It's more of a shift in your mindset. And many times, what I'm teaching season to participants, it's more about that mindset. It's not about teaching them about a firewall or a port number and so on. It's more about the thought process. What's more important that you need to focus on? Okay, so it goes beyond these controls and configurations and so on. It focuses on what truly matters at the executive level, which is the governance, risk, and business alignment. Okay, so that's why we start with domain one, where we talk about the governance. This is where your ability to lead governance, not just follow it. Okay? You learn how to establish policies, set directions, ensure accountability. Okay, so this exam is not about the things like how do I implement this control, how do I configure the firewall, or how do I configure the SIEM and so on. That this is not what this is about. So you stop asking these kind of questions, and you start asking questions such as, does this control align with our business objectives? In the sense, should I be implementing a SIEM solution? And does my business require a SIEM? And many times it may not be required. Do I need a IRM solution? Do I need a DMZ? I don't know. It depends on your business requirement. Should I be installing a IDS or an IPS? Okay. So rather than how do I install an IPS or an IDS, the question should be about which one should I use? Which is more aligned to my business requirement? That's the question you need to be asking in this as a CSM, as a leader. Okay. Yeah. Second, the season will train you to manage risk in a business aligned way, which means you're understanding risk um, terms such as risk appetite or inherent risk, residual risk analysis, and all those terms, right? So we can be engaging with the stakeholders, and your job is to help the stakeholders make that informed, risk-aware decisions. Now, remember, you as a season, as a CISO or whatever role that you play, you are not making risk decisions. You are advising. You're helping make those decisions. Okay? So that's something you need to understand. Communication in crisis. Yeah. So that's the third thing. So you need to be able to communicate well. You'll need to know. You need to know the structure of the organization. Okay, who's accountable, who's responsible, who needs to be updated. Okay, because managing stakeholder expectations is absolutely critical. Okay, and so this is a critical skill that separates technical experts from a trusted leader. Okay, so ultimately, the season pushes you to think like a board advisor, not just a technical lead. So you definitely, obviously, need to have the technical background, it's technically sound, but you, like I said, you need to be more of a managerial or a leadership role, and where you are, uh, you are advising the board, right, and help them making the right decision, risk-aware decision, right? Right. So, yeah, the season will give you the tools to translate those security into business impact and lead with credibility at the highest level. Right? So, these are the key takeaways from this discussion here today. Like I said, translate those take risk into business risk. Right. So, it's not about talking about CVSS scores, or so it's about talking about the revenue loss, regulatory compliance, brand reputation damage, and so on. So you need to be able to speak in these business terms, and the board's going to listen to you. Second, design your security program with strategic alignment. As I mentioned, every initiative uh, should tie back to the business goals. Okay, so how are you supporting when you purchase a firewall, for example? How is it supporting the business goals? Okay, as clear as that. So those goals could be enabling new markets, supporting compliances, reducing operational risks. Okay? So security supports the business strategy. So it becomes a driver, not a blocker. Right? Third, it says strong leaders know how to govern, communicate, and measure effectively. We talked about this. Okay, you have to have proper policies, define accountability. We talk about those reports with the right KPIs, right? So it's not just about doing the work. You may be doing a fantastic job, but unless people know about it, they may not be able to understand or your value. So it's important to prove your value, right? Prove the value of information security to the business. And finally, remember this: your job is to lead security as a board level function. That means you're thinking beyond firewalls and frameworks. You're not just protecting systems, you're protecting trust, continuity, and most importantly, the shareholder values. So these are some of the principles that will help you prepare for the CISM exam. Okay, so this will help you step into the role of a true security leader. Well, I think we're nearing the end, so let's quickly wrap it up. Guess why become a season, right? Now, these are the four domains, as I mentioned. Domain one, information security governance, and this is what I've discussed a lot here today. The importance of this governance. I also mentioned about the risk management. That's domain two, absolutely critical, right? Absolutely critical to be able to manage the risk for your business. And I talked about information security program. You, as a season, you need to be able to develop those programs, implement policies and practices in place, controls in place, training, awareness, and so on. And also, then finally, having a smooth and resilient operation. So you're managing incidents or or even disasters and having BCP, DRP, and so on. So all of these are important aspects of a season. Okay. Yeah. So what is here? Mm, what else to discuss? So season certification part, if you're planning to do so, again, review the requirements. Season is not for everyone. It's not a beginner's foundational course. This is with somebody who has at least 5 years of experience. Okay, and if you are planning to go into that leadership role, that's what this course is for. Study the season domain. There are 4 domains that I just mentioned, and they're all tied together. Register for the exam. It's all the details are in the on the website. Okay, pass the exam, and you got to score 450 out of a possible 800 points. And then once you're certified, then you need to maintain the certificate. That's another aspect, but let's not get ahead. We focused on at the moment till passing exam, and maintaining certification is not very difficult. So be aware of it. So ask all these questions. And first question is, do I want to transition into or grow into a managerial or a leadership role within the information security? And I've known people with 20 years, 30 years of experience who love the technical stuff, and they say, no, I don't want to get into managerial role, and that's okay. Okay. But if you do want to go into that managerial role, season is the certificate for you, right? And does my professional experience align with the season domains? Okay. That's another question you need to ask. And like you said, some of you could be doing a very technical job, managing Microsoft product or whatever it is. Is it something that you want to transition? Is it something that you'll be willing to work towards? Am I willing to commit to the study and preparation required to pass the CSM exam? Okay, so you need to be able to study, well, almost every day, half an hour, 1 hour, or more, whatever it takes. If you cannot study for whatever reasons, then you probably shouldn't think about CSM exam. There is no shortcut. There's no shortcut. You need to study. And the question is, even do I need to study even if I have taken maybe suppose you join my course, do I still need to study? Absolutely yes. Okay, there's no shortcut. You need to be able to study, uh, like you said, half an hour, 1 hour. I'm sure you can manage it, right? And if you're in this field in technology and security, you have to study your entire life, unfortunately. So you need to be able to commit those time. If you cannot, don't think about season. Okay, but yeah. And am I prepared to maintain the certification through continuing education? I think this is not a very difficult aspect of things, and we expect you to learn at least about 40 hours in a year, which is not a very big deal. Okay? So I don't think this is a major challenge, because in this line, in this profession, you have to keep learning. If you do not, you're left behind very, very soon with new technologies coming in, with new challenges. You will be left behind. So I don't think you will need to worry about it. But yes, like I said, the first uh, and the third question are the more important ones. Do I want to do that? And more importantly, will I be able to commit those stuff? Will I be able to work hard towards it? Okay. So that's all for today. And yeah, I think we have a few more minutes. We can take questions from you. If anybody has any question, I'm here.
Hi, sir. Wonderful session. Thank you so much for that. Once again, very comprehensive. So, yes, we do have a few questions. So we have Suraj. He is writing from LinkedIn, and he's asking, we talk about risk appetite, risk capacity all the
Mhm.
time, but is it actually possible to put it in numbers? I feel it will work only if quantitatively analyzed. But in actual 99% of the times we go qualitative. So my question is risk appetite and risk capacity terms viable?
Yes, it's a very good question. That's a very advanced question, in fact. You're right. So usually, when you get the risk appetite from the board, they might mention, we have a very low risk appetite, or a moderate, or whatever that is. Sometimes they may even say we have no risk appetite for this particular activity. Suppose like a fraud uh, from an employee, we said no appetite for that, and which is fine, right? And then the question is, how do I translate that into my understanding? And so and so just high, low, moderate may be very, very vague. It's very subjective. So can I convert that into certain numbers? And the answer is yes, we can. And that's what we need to learn. Okay? And every organization has different parameters. They might say low means these are the low appetite means these things. Okay, so one or two things. uh, and every organization is different. For example, low appetite means we cannot afford a loss of up to $1 million, or whatever those numbers are. So we need to define those numbers definitely, because otherwise it could be a little subjective. These are things which we discuss during the season course. I can give you more examples, but it will take obviously a longer time. So during the courses, I discuss these things. How do I translate those subjective statements into a quantitative ones? And that is important. But thank you
Right,
for
sir.
asking.
And
It's an
yeah,
important point.
great. And that's the perfect segue. So I'd like to remind everybody that Mr. Sazrai is going to be starting with another one of his CISM cohorts. It is starting from the 16th of August, and these are, as always, weekend classes. So feel free to reach out to us. I'll be putting the numbers on the screen in just a moment. So there is one more question, sir.
Mhm.
So Mujahid is writing from LinkedIn, and he's asking, how do we calculate MTTD and MTTR?
So these are mean times, right? How do we calculate? So mean times means it's like an average. Suppose, let's say there's a mean time to repair a device. That's a simple example. And we try to take into account how many time does it take. Let's say there are three instances, we have data for that. We combine that and divide it and take an average of that. That's how it's done. So we this is simple maths. It's take an average of whatever that value is. Mean time to detect, mean time to repair, mean time to respond, whatever that numbers are. It's just a mean time average basis what has happened in the past. So simple calculation, not a very difficult ones.
Great, great. Thank you, sir. So we'll just wait another, say, 30 seconds to 1 minute. In case there are any more questions, any more queries, please feel free to drop them in the comment section. And the floor is open, so Mr. Sazrai will be answering all of them. I've also put the numbers on the screen, so anybody who's looking to join or learn more about the training, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be happy to set you up and get you started. And you can avail the Independence Month discount as well on the training. So, this is the perfect time. If you've been thinking about it for a while, just go, just do it. Let's get you started. So, right, sir, I don't see any more questions. So, I think this is a good time to wrap up the session.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you,
Thank you
everyone,
so
for
much. Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for joining us and taking out the time. It's always, always really, really great to have you with us. And we'll see everyone in the next one. Thank you.
bye. Thank you all.